Have you ever found yourself trapped in a routine that plays on repeat, lacking any spark of your own, like your days were scripted by someone else? Do you feel that sharp twinge, that your life could be so much more than just the shadow of other people's expectations? Walking confidently down a path laid out by the crowd can give the illusion of safety, as if every step has already been carved into the ground. But that same path, solid and familiar, becomes an invisible fence that cages your breath and silences your longing. Living the way everyone else does means surrendering that inner vibration that beats with urgent persistence. The desire to forge yourself, to challenge yourself, to transform through the crucible of risk. That surrender, soft at first, slowly takes over the soul and turns it into a zombie repeating someone else's script. You've probably seen those anonymous faces lost in routine. Wake up, clutch a coffee mug, slip into the office, wear a neutral smile, head back home, shut down the mind with a screen. Day after day. That monotony, more lethal than a blade, eats away at the sap of creativity and drags the will into the mud of mediocrity. It's the triumph of the last man, that creature who flees the torment of greatness and numbs himself with trivial pleasures. His highest ambition is to blend in, to avoid risk, to never feel discomfort. And just like that, the spark that separates the truly alive from the mere survivors goes dark. The price we pay for that false sense of peace is the mutilation of what is essential. The slave morality, woven from resentment and fear, praises obedience, humility, and bland equality. Under its rule, questioning authority becomes heresy, and the desire for individuality, a sin. But isn't the ability to question what we've inherited the very fuse that ignites progress? Every time you smother a doubt out of fear of ridicule, you escort your own burial. You become a prisoner to the voice of others telling you what is right, which thoughts deserve to bloom and which must wither in silence. And yet, there is a quiet, subterranean whisper humming a different tune, the will to power. Not as violent conquest over others, but as a vital force to grow, to surpass yourself, to carve new meaning into the flesh of existence. That will cause you to lift your gaze, to recognize the latent powers within you, to challenge inertia with every arch of your will. When you let that force move through you, you feel the pulse of the universe in your own blood. Life stops being a fleeting whim and becomes a daring adventure, an epic poem you write with every heartbeat. Challenging the herd comes with danger. Loneliness, rejection, misunderstanding. But what is loneliness when the heart beats with conviction? It becomes a mantle of stars where the individual forges their legacy. Social ostracism, so feared, may be the lightest price to pay compared to the shame of living in the shadows. To have the courage to raise one's voice amidst the monotone chorus is an act of rebellion that breathes life and awakens echoes of creation all around. The world slowly remembers that true harmony does not emerge from uniform silence, but from the clash and fusion of brave singularities. And what if that voice boiling inside you could become a beacon? Nietzsche evoked the Übermensch, the one capable of transcending old moralities and building new, personal, and untransferable values. That archetype is not an unattainable ideal, but a constant call to overcome every self-imposed limit, to transmute every wound into strength, every doubt into a spark of clarity. The Übermensch is not defined by possessions or titles, but by the relentless capacity to reinvent oneself, to dance with uncertainty, and to embrace chaos as the raw material of creation. That challenge is not a one-day affair, but a journey without maps, where the internal compass sometimes falters and demands courage not to give up. In those crossroads, the heart races wildly and asks the essential question: will you choose the cowardly comfort of the familiar or the vibrant flame of what's possible? Those who answer the call experience the sweet vertigo of risk, the possibility of falling, yes, but also the ecstasy of soaring above the shadows that once held them down. As you confront yourself, existence becomes an untamed canvas, where the shades emerge from the clash of opposing forces. That canvas demands commitment. It is not enough to merely observe your own work. You must get your hands dirty, mix impossible colors, and strike every dark corner with the brush of boldness. Only then does the word creation make sense, shedding its rhetorical sheen to become a pulsing force, a heartbeat that burns from within. You may fear entering that labyrinth without guides. You might prefer the comfortable certainty of someone else's home and the echo of inherited opinions. Yet each moment of conformity eats away at your freedom, and with it, the sacred possibility of becoming something new. Nietzsche urges us to cast off the lifeline of herd morality, to abandon the anchor of passive tradition, and dive into the turbulent waters where world creators swim. There, life is not an undefined value, but a treasure won in the forge of the spirit. The fear of social condemnation fades when you understand that the only true verdict comes from your own conscience. That insolent voice that sometimes breaks the silence of the conformist and sings under sleepless moons. That conscience urges you with intensity. Are you willing to hand your destiny over to the whims of trends and customs, or would you rather carve your path with the chisel of passion? Your answer to that question defines the pulse of your existence. In that boldness lies the promise of a fulfilled life, not one that is whining and bland. True joy is not found in the complacent embrace of the crowd, but in the liberating euphoria of someone who pushes their limits and discovers themselves to be vaster than they ever imagined. The pain that accompanies each breakthrough is a brother to joy, and both leave indelible tattoos on the skin. The ink of someone who has chosen to live under direct light, with no cocoon to shield them. To restore lost meaning to your day means daring to reject the easy path and embrace uncertainty. It means letting go of the comfort of stereotypes and boldly owning your uniqueness. Because, ultimately, there is no greater coward than the one who settles for repeating borrowed formulas while their inner poem turns to ash. And there is no greater heroism than that which is born from the ongoing battle against mediocrity, with the certainty that the present moment is the only divinity worth surrendering to. If today you look in the mirror and see unsolved mysteries, unhealed breaks, and verses yet to be written, then it's time to raise the banner of your power. Leave behind the tribe of those who fear silence and emptiness, because only in that vastness will you be able to hear the latent roar calling you. It is the first beat of your personal symphony, and neither habit nor public opinion can silence it. Every creative act, every moral boldness, every step into the unknown is a hymn to the value of truly existing. Don't let the whip of others' indifference break your spirit. Listen to the unique tone of your desire and let it echo with force. Only then will you have turned fear into fuel, uncertainty into adventure, and solitude into a temple where your most sublime virtues dwell. In the end, the question Nietzsche throws into the abyss of your conscience does not allow for half-hearted answers. It is not enough to whisper a timid, someday, or take refuge in martyr-like excuses. Life demands total commitment, or else you'll end up serving the dreams of nameless graves. Do you dare to challenge the collective shadow, to tear the veil of convention and build your own world with your will to power? The answer will decide whether your existence becomes a radiant song, or a sorrow that fades into darkness. Living under the silent dictatorship of the herd means giving up the passion that inflames the spirit and the boldness that drives us to carve our own path. Nietzsche challenges us to strip off the worn-out garments of common morality in order to feel, naked, the vibration of our will to power. What follows are 5 practical guidelines to help you break away from the crowd and reclaim authorship of your existence. The first piece of advice is, above all, to identify and question your inherited values. Look with inquisitive eyes at every norm you take for granted. Why do you long for that conventional career? Who decided which ways of life are worthy? Ask yourself, like someone dismantling a foreign mechanism, where that urge to conform really comes from. For instance, imagine Lucia, a medical student whose true calling pulsed in dramatic arts. Day after day, she convinced herself that medicine was the serious and respectable path, until she decided to confront the constant echo of her family and academic environment. In an act of quiet rebellion, she devoted an entire weekend to writing and staging a play. The result wasn't a demolition of her past, but rather the seed that revealed her authentic inner fire. When you identify the external origins of your ambitions, you recover the key that unlocks your true will. Secondly, immerse yourself in readings and experiences that shake your intellectual comfort. It's not enough to skim through agreeable thoughts. You must seek out texts and encounters that erode your certainties and awaken your uncomfortable curiosity. Nietzsche recommended hoisting your intellectual sails. Those who sail without risk barely discover the shoreline. Take the example of Marcos, a software engineer who felt an inexplicable emptiness despite his success. One day, on a whim, he bought a book of Persian mystical poetry. Its lines about ego extinction and the infinite oceans stirred something deep within him. Soon after, he began attending medieval philosophy debates and experimenting with free verse writing. That voluntary jolt out of his comfort zone helped him realize that the uniformity of his professional discipline had erased his creative pulse. Challenging your mind with the unexpected is the sharp chisel that sculpts your uniqueness. Third, set aside moments of active solitude to listen to the murmur of your inner voice. This isn't about silent isolation, but rather an intentional retreat where distractions dissolve and essential questions rise to the surface. Think of Carla, a marketing executive constantly surrounded by stimuli, meetings, endless notifications, mandatory socializing. She decided to spend a week in a cabin by the river with no cell signal. There, in the serenity of the flowing water and silence, old desires emerged: to paint, to learn guitar, to explore Greek philosophy. That solitude didn't weaken her, it strengthened her. When she returned, she wrote a proposal for a community mural project and reorganized her schedule to make time for art. When you silence the chatter of others, you discover that your will quietly whispers solutions the crowd could never offer you. Fourth, dare to perform small acts of symbolic rebellion that disrupt your routine. You don't need a grand gesture. It's enough to challenge imposed customs with genuine purpose. For example, Alberto, a bank employee, decided he would no longer attend the traditional Sunday family dinners, where the conversation always revolved around gossip and social rankings. Instead, he organized a monthly gathering with friends to share travel plans and philosophical readings. Those who initially judged him eventually joined in, and little by little, that circle sparked a movement of ideas that turned apathy into enthusiasm. These acts, refusing a meaningless social obligation, choosing a different breakfast every morning, or practicing a creative habit before work, create an imperceptible tremor that, over time, cracks the stone of predictability. Finally, create your own values through creative projects that put your will to power to the test. Nietzsche wasn't advocating destruction for its own sake, but rather the creation of something new and meaningful. Picture Sophia, a marketing professional who felt her life lacked purpose. Instead of chasing corporate success metrics, she started a blog featuring stories of people who reinvented themselves after profound loss. Through interviews, essays, and photographs, she built a community that found comfort in others' resilience. Her project not only gave her a legacy, it also illuminated the path for others. This act of creation, whether it's a business, an art form, a sport, or a social commitment, embodies the will to power transformed into an offering to the world, and at the same time, a testimony of your independence from the herd. These 5 principles aren't foolproof formulas. They're compasses pointing toward the expansion of your individuality. Identifying and questioning your values, shaking your intellect with uncomfortable stimuli, embracing active solitude, practicing symbolic acts of rebellion, and finally, forging your own values through creative action. All of these converge on the same horizon: the emergence of a whole human being, shaped by their own hands. The reward isn't the unanimous applause of the crowd, but the authentic heartbeat of someone breathing at their own rhythm. Every step on this path involves risk and solitude, but also the chance to taste the ecstasy of living untethered. Don't mistake these ideas for just a list of techniques. They are, at their core, an ethical and existential challenge. They call on you to be the architect of your destiny, not a pawn on someone else's board. When you decide to leave the herd, your life stops being a story written by tradition and becomes an original text, full of unpredictable twists and pages ignited by passion. So, if you ever feel like the strings of routine are holding you up without your consent, remember these principles, and cut the anchor tying you to the shore. Dive into the turbulent current of your will, and step by step, prove that your existence can echo with a voice that is unique, powerful, and free.